Is he gonna show up? Is he there? Is he there? Testy. His mute is on. His photo's on. Testy 1 2 3. Testy 1 2 3. Okay.
All right. Uh,
Ooh,
can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Oh, let me fix that. Yeah, Celia's sitting right next to me somehow.
Just got a ping from her saying Charlie's turn coming on right now, and I'm like, yeah, I've got a screen. I've got Charlie's avatar. His
Yeah.
name.
Hold on, I gotta see what I'm doing. Yeah, okay. All right. All right, bye.
Oh, you were literally on the phone with Celia?
Yeah, yeah. I think she was, pretending like she's telling me about something else to make sure I'm online with you on time.
Oh my God, how funny. Well, yeah, it probably sounds like her. She does shit like that to me all the time.
Which
So,
is which is funny because I think like of the three of us, she's the one who forgets everything. I don't know. At least
boy,
between
don't
me and
even
her.
start. Well, and then I was like, oh, she's like, well, you've got this interview this week with, Charlie and Mike Kingston, and I'm the one who's putting them together. So I'll shoot him a and all this stuff. And I was just like, this yesterday, I was like, so did you send him all that stuff I sent you last week? And they're like, she's like, no. I
Well,
said, oh, okay, good job there, assistant person. So I told her she was fired.
well, that's good. Get rid of that
Well,
nonsense. Can you see me at all? Because I can't.
I can see you, but you're like kissing the camera. So if you back
Uh-huh. Well,
up,
this is what happens when you're blind. You end up getting close to things. How about now? Do I look more
there you
reasonable?
go. Now you're a real person. Is there a window open behind you? You have a big glowy thing above your head.
Oh,
So for somebody who's an atheist, it kind of looks like Jesus is behind you or something.
well, why would I believe in myself?
Yes. Pump.
Uh, so how about now? I turned that off.
Yeah. There you go. Now I
All
see
right.
you. Now you're cool. All
All
right.
right.
Perfect. All
Uh,
right.
okay, as long as you can hear me,
I can hear you.
because all right, that's good news. You know what? I wonder if I should. Do we need any props? Hold on, let me see.
I would like you, because you're in perfect frame when you sit down. When we
Yeah, I'm
get
gonna
to
sit.
it,
I'll
show
sit
us your
down.
little cool thing around your neck that you have, which is different than my
My
cool.
Alcor
Oh,
canister
so we're
it,
gonna be. Yeah, I love it.
in
Okay,
case I
so
free, at home I need to put my brain in here real quick.
so and to say that I have a few fans that are interested in this, because everybody is gonna believe that it's like everybody's gonna say, oh yeah, they cut your head off and then they play soccer with it in the cryonics. So it's like we're
Well,
gonna.
what's wrong with that? First of all, why are Americans always upset with soccer? I don't get that.
I don't either. Well, and I started in Rotary a quote unquote world football fans, because I had so many people around the world that were so upset with the word soccer, and the word origins are in like the UK. So are you on your laptop?
Yes,
Okay. Take your laptop screen and pull it towards you just a little bit, because it looks like you're a floating head.
like
Oh,
this.
now you have shoulders. Perfect.
Is it?
Perfect.
I
Don't
can't.
move.
Okay.
You were a floating head, which made this whole interview
I
even
could have done
weirder.
like floating around, like
Yeah. So it would be like, look, everybody, the singularity is now. And here's
yeah,
Charlie,
it's just one head.
one head that floats around.
It's a singular.
All
Uh,
right. So before I get you going, I have you down as an entrepreneur, a musician, a jack of all trades, and a friend for almost 30 years. That's how I'm going to introduce you to, because you have so many freaking jobs that it would be a very long show unless you have an official job title these days.
Uh, it all depends on if you're going to interview me later on for that other company I'm with, TZR
Oh,
Labs. But you don't have to bring that up. I did run for the Transhumanist Party, but that might be a whole nother subject that, when I was presidential nominee for the Transhumanist Party in 2020.
well, and I'm going to be interviewing Jim Stroll and some of the longevity folks down the way. And I think we should. I think we should. There are some people I'm not, like Max and Natasha. I ain't gonna touch them.
It's funny
But
because they're more transhumanist than
right.
Jim and
Jim is almost turning into like a spiritual kind of thing. And then you
uh-huh.
have Max and Natasha, who are definitely more transhumanists. And then you have the AI world that's fully decided that we're all going to be just, we don't need robots. We're just going to skip ahead to AI made people.
If you want a good interview for transhumanism, and I know I know like
Sure.
why, you don't want to talk to, and the other thing is that Jim Stroll and Joe Bardeen, who, they're not really, they'll say they're transhumanists, but if you really want to get the best transhumanist interview, you've got to interview Gennady Stolyarov. Gennady is the chairman of the United States Transhumanist Party, and he's a very good friend of mine, and he's also a really good speaker, and he's really articulate, really intelligent. His answers will blow you away. He just knows the stuff better than anybody.
I'm sure our mutual friend Celia knows him too.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I,
So
I mean, look, he's the one who wanted me to run for president. He knows, like,
gotcha.
and then and trust me, he's forever grateful to me because I brought, when I first got nominated, I needed to pick a vice presidential nominee.
Right.
And I was excited because I thought, oh, good, I can have a black woman as my vice presidential nominee.
So
And
do you
Celia
have,
said yes for about 10 seconds. And then she's, oh, no, I can't because, politics or
do
something
it.
about rape.
Yep.
But then, so my next option was, well, I still wanted to have a woman represent, be the vice presidential nominee. And my other buddy was Liz Parrish.
Yeah.
And she said yes. And oh my God, I became the hero of the Transhumanist Party because, she's she's world known because of her breakthroughs. And we can get her on your show too as an
Yeah. I'm actually, I don't know if Celia told you this. I'm actually in September gonna be at Radfest. I'm gonna have a booth at Radfest, and I'm gonna be there interviewing and talking to everybody, like at a real live booth on location. It'll be a lot of
Well,
fun.
if you need to get her, separately or privately or like for one of these shows, I can get her for you probably pretty easily. I mean,
Okay.
because her story is so amazing. And plus, it's, I mean, if you're familiar with the BioViva and everything
Oh
that they
yeah.
did, it's blown up. And she was literally world recognized for, when she first got herself, she flew out of the country to inject herself with this particular substance that they developed for the purpose of extending her telomeres, which is what people consider a possibility for life extension, because she
Right.
found out that hers were too short. And she found it out because she was concerned about her children who were having some issues. So it
Right.
started out where she was trying to save her children. Then she found out she was afflicted with this situation. And then she developed this whole company. It's very, interesting, compelling, heartwarming, but and she's also really good speaker. Really, like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
some
Well, yeah,
people
I
are
was at
not great
Redfest a
speakers.
couple
She's
years
one
ago.
of the
She's
better ones,
awesome.
definitely.
Okay. I'm gonna count you in. Let's jam on this, because I know
Yep.
you're a busy guy, and we're just going to I'm gonna model this very much like a show I did last year, which just got a huge response, and it was called Trans 101. And I actually had a guy that was like, well, was born a woman, but it was just like, so I'm going to ask you all the questions that everybody is always too afraid to ask. And he was like, cool, let's do it. And by the end of it, like the last 5 minutes, I said, so what was the biggest thing from changing your gender that happened? He goes, I get paid more now. And I'm listened to more. And I'm like, okay, well, that's just fucked up. And good night.
That's so funny. That's great.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's another show. Okay. All right, let me catch you in, Mr. Kam. And Tizar. All right. What are you at, Tizar?
Senior advisor of alliances.
Wow, that sounds like a business card and a half.
It's
All right.
definitely something that was, made up on the spur of the moment by the CEO.
But it sounds cool.
Oh God, it is. And it's important that I'm the senior one because I don't have to, worry about
You
there
don't have
is no
to like
junior
you
one.
can just you have a group of minions because you're
I,
the
I
senior.
can tell the junior one what to do all the time, except that title doesn't exist.
That's right. All right, let's rock and roll. Here we
Yep.
go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I get to like hang out with one of my buddies of about 30 years now, Charlie Kam, on the show. And it's kind of funny that after all these years of a show, after a while, you start looking in your backyard and go, oh, God, Charlie's pretty interesting. And he'd be willing to talk to me about one of the more sensitive subjects that when I just put feelers out, people were going crazy about. So, first of all, Charlie Kam is an entrepreneur, a musician, somebody who's willing to hang out with me and my partner Celia for more than 30 years now. And he is the senior advisor. Wait a minute. I wrote it down. I wrote it down for Tizar Labs. Okay. He is the senior advisor of alliances for Tizar Labs, which is another show all in itself because Tizar may be on the road to making a lot of people's lives a lot healthier. And that's all the sneak in we'll put in for that. But today we're talking about freezing people. That's right. We're talking about if you die or when you die, if you die, look at that. Look at the longevity person in me already coming out. What do you do when you die? And a lot of people get cremated. Some people get pretty caskets and get put in the ground. But no, not my brother Charlie. He believes in cryonics and freezing himself once he dies. Say hello to the world, Mr. Kam. Hi, Charlie. How you doing?
Hey, Gwen, I'm doing well. It's good to talk to you. Yeah, it's I live in Chicago, so freezing isn't really a problem for me.
Right.
Uh,
I think you're wasting a lot of money. You could just stand outside in
I,
January, couldn't you?
I've posted that on social media where I said, look, in the middle of winter in Chicago, I'll post that and say, now offering free cryonics in Chicago. Just step outside, you'll be that in the community, half of them laugh and half of them say, hey, you got to take this more seriously. Um,
What
yeah, look,
cryonics is? What is
so
cryonics?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is cryonics?
So cryonics is kind of okay. Um, as you were saying, when a person is dying or going to die or die, essentially there's three options really, and one is being buried in the ground, one is being cremated, and the third option, which rarely anybody uses, but it's there, is cryonics, where you're cryopreserved. So most people are familiar with the first two.
Right?
Well, cryonics is that when you are legally pronounced legally dead, and it's important to say legally because you can't start freezing somebody unless a coroner says you're dead. Otherwise, you could get in a lot of trouble.
Oh,
You can go
okay.
to jail for that kind of stuff. So it has to be pronounced that the person has passed on. And then at that point, a cryonics company would start to cool you down and then get you to their facility or in some cases they can do it on site, but then they will inject your body with a cryopreservation, it's almost like an antifreeze, but It's a bio antifreeze type of
So
substance.
that you're not putting the stuff that you put in your car in your body.
Correct. Yeah. No.
Okay.
No. Unless you're parked car. No, they don't. It's a biograde antifreeze type thing where they inject it into you, and the purpose of that is so that when they do submerge you into the liquid nitrogen, which is we'll get into a second, but that there won't be any crystallization formation of the water molecules. Because
Ah,
as you
okay.
might remember from old, fifth grade chemistry or whatever, that when you freeze water, it expands,
Right.
and that could burst cells, and that could cause a lot of damage. But because they put this cryoprotectant into your body before they submerge you into liquid nitrogen, that doesn't happen. You don't have the bursting of cells. What really happens is because they put this liquid nitrogen into your body, when they do submerge you into liquid nitrogen, because I mean, when they put the cryoprotectant in your body and they submerge your whole body into liquid nitrogen, and there's no expansion of cells, what happens is it's called vitrification. So
Okay.
the term freezing is one that's used because, well, it is in very cold temperature storage, but you actually go into a process called vitrification, which is where, because there isn't damage of the cells from the freezing, your body is almost like in a glass-like state. So
Wow.
they've done scans of this because they've done this test thousands of times before, and this stuff's been used by cryonics companies for a while, quite a while now, decades actually. And they can scan and they see, oh, look, no damage. So the preservation is actually very good as far as the process of doing it. Now, the tricky part is that you want to be able to cryopreserve the person as soon as they are
I was gonna
pronounced
say
dead.
you started this whole thing off by saying they have to legally be dead, and you specifically said legally. So I know that when bodies die, I mean, it's like tick, 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 tick. Things start breaking down from the moment of that last heartbeat.
Correct. And that's why a lot of these, so they the companies, there are some of the companies that are cryonics companies will have a standby team. So they know, for example, with regard to dying, there's the number one killer in the United States and probably the world is really heart disease. The number two
Right.
killer is cancer. If
Okay.
you're cryopreservation, if you're a person like me and you're signed up with cryonics, if you had to pick one, you go with cancer because at least you'll be prepared. You'll have the standby team ready to go, and then the minute you are uh, pronounced dead by a
Most
coroner,
likely in a hospital or hospice. Yeah.
yeah, they'll be right there to start the process, and there'll be no real degradation happens to your body because the whole point of cryonics is that we want to cool the person or their body down as quickly as possible so that there's no apoptosis or degradation of the cells or anything that's going to cause it to not be you anymore, like to turn into mush essentially. You don't want that.
Right.
You want to be able to cryopreserve this person as best possible. And when you are laying in a bed somewhere and they say, oh, we're sorry, you're going to die and there's your last moment. Well, that one is really easy. If you have a heart attack and you're alone in your apartment somewhere and they don't find you for 2 weeks, that's rough, man. That is a tough, tough place for cryonics to be successful because your body has decomposed and a lot of bad
Right.
stuff could have happened. And really, it's mostly about your brain. That's what we're most concerned about. If let's say for example you're a cryo patient like or somebody who signed up with cryonics like I am, and let's say
Right.
you get in a car accident and I hate to sound gory here, but let's say you lose your leg or something like that. Well,
Right.
and you die. Well, legs aren't your brain. That's not your memory. That's not what most people
Well, and
consider
one would
you.
argue it's not your spine, it's not your heart, it's not your lungs. It
Right.
is. It's
What
one of
makes you
it's
you
yeah.
really is your brain. I mean, a lot
Right.
of people like to be poetic and say it's your heart and all that, but
Right.
you know, come on, we've had heart transplants for a long time now,
Right. We haven't
and
had a brain one yet.
yeah.
Yet.
So that's why that's kind of the gist of what cryonics is. That you will try to you'll cryopreserve a person as quickly as possible the moment they're pronounced legally dead.
So I one, this doesn't shock me, but I'm sure there's people listening to me because you and I have hung out in some of the longevity communities and transhumanist communities. So hearing about cryonics, is just like, oh, that's what Charlie does. But there has been some questions over the years that I've always wanted to ask you and ask others. And some I do jokingly, and some I actually really think are interesting topics, like the ceremony behind a funeral. So, and I'm not saying if you're an atheist or if you're a Catholic or if you're a Muslim or a Jew or anything in between, when somebody's life is over, there's usually some type of ceremony. In the cryonics world, do you still have that ceremony? Because I would
Yes.
argue that perhaps are you dead and frozen, or are you in a state of limbo? So, I mean, I'm not planning ahead. Don't worry. I haven't bought a cake or anything. I'd like you around for a long time. But I'm just saying, like, is there, do you get any ceremony, or is it just, no, Charlie's frozen. We'll catch up to him later?
No, these cryonics companies are they're run by humans and they have emotions and they understand that. What you just described is actually is brilliant because that's exactly right. So they smartly do offer this ceremonial procedures because there are it's exactly what you said. People are used to that. If you even, you know, look for the longest time, especially, in this country, but for the longest time up until the 1960s, the main disposition of people when they're dead and their bodies was burial.
Right.
And so funerals and all that became the standard. You would, you die and then you'd have whatever, but it's a process for people to go there and do whatever it is that they do to remember that person or to celebrate them, whatever. And then cremation became something that was available in the mid to late 60s. And then, but even there, you can have now, or since then, they had ceremonies for that. They just have, instead of a casket, it's an urn, and you have
Right.
the ashes in there. You could do that. So cryonics is not, oblivious to that fact. And they said, yeah, of course, if you want, you can come to the. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if you come to the place where the person is cryopreserved, you can have a little ceremony. You can be outside of the
Their
cryostat,
chamber.
the
Okay.
chamber they call it, or they call it a doer. They got different names, and different companies have different names, but essentially it's just a huge container type thing. It's not a see-through like a lot of movies like to have it for the purpose of drama. You don't see the person's face. It's a little bit
You
gross.
don't see like a naked Arnold Schwarzenegger with a whole bunch of tubes all over him. It's not like that.
No, no. I
Dang.
mean, no, it's not. No, it's a big metal container, usually 9 feet, 10 feet tall, and it can actually hold more than one body in there. Um,
Well, that's freaked out people. Now there's people in their car that are like running off the car because you just said that.
here's I gotta let's here. Let me address something about this. This is always funny to me because I go to these conferences and I answer a lot of these questions. So people say, "Oh, cryonics just freaks me out. It's too gross."
Right.
They freeze you. Okay, let's look at the other options, right? And if you describe and everything's marketing, right? Everything's how you describe something, right? So
Oh
let's just
yeah.
say, for example, I'm going to tell you the three options that you have when you die. And that's burned, buried, or frozen, right? Those are the three, right? So here's your options. The first
This
one,
is kind of brutal. So the first sentence you're telling us, Charlie, is that, what does he say? He said burnt, burial, or
burned, buried, or frozen. Those are your
buried
options,
or
right?
frozen.
The first one,
Okay.
burning, we're going to take grandpa who just died. We're going to take his body and we're going to throw him into that fire and we're going to let it burn to a bunch of ashes. And then we're going to put it in an urn and give it back to you so you can look at it. That's pretty bad. That sounds gross to me. The other option is we're going to take poor old grandpa who just died and we're going to take his body, shove it into a small little box, and put him underground so worms can eat him. That sounds pretty gross to me. Now, the third option is we're going to take grandpa who just was passed away. We're going to use some scientific technology to cool his body down, put him into a liquid nitrogen chamber where in the future we might actually be able to use the latest nanotechnology in the future to actually bring to rework on his body and repair whatever it is that he died from. and revive them so you can see him again, and maybe even have him give him a healthier body by rejuvenation of his cells. So which one do you want to do for your grandpa? You tell me. Like, put it that way
And
and
I
see how
know,
people
but
react.
there's snarkiness with a hint of truth in it, and I think that's exactly what you're saying. I like I said, I'm going to be 60 this year. And so this is probably why I've started many of these conversations that I'm going to be having over the next couple of months about when you die or brain health or all these different things. And I will say, and I always say, if you want to send your hate mail to me, it's rotarianpod@gmail.com. Please go ahead.
I got
Because
it down. I
I
jotted it down just now.
got it down. Because I know I had a mother and father that passed away very quickly. And I had to go in and I was shown coffins that were thousands of dollars, or cremation that was thousands of dollars. And do I want this add on? And do I want a flag? And do I want this? And do I want that? And it was an emotional hell. It really was. And I found myself afterwards going, that was a racket.
Yep.
So that was an absolute that just to take care of my parents. And then they both, their requests were to be cremated. And then instead of an urn, God bless you for saying an urn, I didn't get an urn. I got a maroon colored plastic box with a bag of remains in it. And and I believe it was, not my mother or my father, but it was like they hand it to you and it's like, Mazel tov. There you go. Have a good time. Here's your box of parent. And so what does intrigue me about what you have is at least you have a plan. And your plan is, but in saying all that, how do you talk to the people who are the religious folks that are listening to me? That because this is, I assume anybody of any religion has had cryonics done, correct? Or
Oh
or it's
yeah,
just
every religion is
atheists.
crap. Everybody, there's a representative from every religion and atheists. So they're all everybody's partaking in
Okay,
it.
so everybody's partaking in it. They're willing to let you have your ceremony if you want it. But what you're basically telling the world is my parents don't have a plan B. I got a bag of parent. I got a bag of parent. And what you're saying is cryonics can offer you a plan B.
Yep, that's
And what do you
correct.
have to lose?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. All right. So then what are you hoping for then? Let's
Well,
say they
more life.
like in 100 years or so. And
Well, okay, a couple things that you mentioned just there. The answer to the question is, for me personally, I'd like to not die. That's like plan A is don't die.
number
Um,
one, don't die. Gotcha.
and and by the way, I'm Elcor, which is the company that I'm signed up with. Like, if you go to their website, you'll see they call them patients. They don't call them corpses or people that are dead. They actually call them patients because
Okay.
in their interpretation of it, which is the way I look at it too, is like you're basically trying out the last treatment, right? For whatever you're dying from. Like, let's say, for example, you did have cancer and you tried chemo and it didn't work, and you tried radiation and it didn't work, and then the doctor says to you, look, we don't have any other treatments available. But what if they said to you, like, okay, there's nothing left here, but there is one other treatment. It's the final treatment that we could probably offer. We're basically going to cool you down, and then we're going to keep you in a state of cryopreservation until the future technology can fix whatever it is. Do you want to try that treatment, or you just want to give up and be gone forever because we can have you buried? I mean, it's technically kind of a
It's
treatment.
asking the question a different way.
But that's the truth. Like, that's what it is. It's a
Well, yeah.
treatment, and it's just like the other ones where they might work. The chemo might work, and the radiation might work. But if it doesn't, you go to the next treatment. So the final treatment is cryopreservation. Why not try it? And with regard to the religious people, right? Because the idea is that the argument I hear is like, wait, you're messing with God. If you cryopreserve somebody,
Right. It's God's will.
you don't have you can't, if it's their time to go, it's their time to go. Okay, couple things I'll say. Number one, um, did you know that the first CPR was the first successful CPR was done by a Scottish surgeon back in 1700s. Most people don't
Wow.
realize it goes back that far. When you actually do cardiopulmonary resuscitation on somebody, right? So that means back in if you were in the 1600s and you were walking down the street and had a heart attack, well, that was it. You were dead. But if you were in the 1700s and you happen to be near this Scottish surgeon or somebody that learned what he was doing, you fall down from a heart attack,
You could have had a chance.
he might know what to do, and then all of a sudden you live 20 more years. That means the goalpost of death has been moved up. The idea of what our definition of death was no longer just, your heart stopped and you died. No, now you got that. And in 1930, they invented the first defibrillator, and in 1947 was the first time they used it successfully.
Wow.
So if if you died over 100 years ago and there was no defibrillator, that might have been it for you. But by 1930s or 1947, which is when they did the first one, all of a sudden you're not dead. So did that interfere with God because we used a defibrillator? I mean, now it's an accepted thing. In fact, if you don't use it, people's like, "Hey, why didn't you use defibrillator on me? I just had a heart attack or my loved one."
Right,
So
right,
we
right.
accepted that. That's just another way of extending life. It's not really that much different other than, I mean, technically there's differences, but the idea that a person was pronounced dead at one time based on a heart attack is no longer the case because of things like a defibrillator. And
Right.
that's the same thing with this. Now, with regard to intervening in like the soul, right?
Right.
Well, here's the thing. Let's say that you believe in God and that God is all powerful and that he is the one who makes the decisions as to what's going to happen with your life. Well, let's say you get cryopreserved. Now, if it is God's destiny or your destiny
We'll
or the
use the air
decision
quotes
by,
on the podcast and say God's will, right? The
right,
air
let's say
quotes.
it's
Right.
God's will.
Okay.
It's God's will
Okay.
that you're going to die. Well, here's the thing. Just like we try to do defibrillators, right? Now, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And a person is dead and then their soul, according to God's believing person, that soul went to heaven. There
Right.
was no interference. I mean, humans tried to interfere apparently, but if it's God's will, it's God's will. So it's same thing with cryonics, right? If you say like, well, I'm going to die, but I'm going to be cryopreserved, and then they'll bring you back in such and such time. Well, if it doesn't work, let's say you get cryopreserved and the thing never works at all. Well, God, that's because it was God's will. And by the way, like, so
So
if these feeble humans
James,
are
you're saying
freezing people, God can, it's not like they can freeze them so solid that the all powerful God's going to reach his hand down to get the soul. Oh my God, it's all frozen. I can't get his soul. No, that's not going to, if it's God's will, it's God's will. So you don't
right.
have to worry like, oh, I froze him. I must, oh my God, I'm interfering with God. Look, you know how it is. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, as Mike Tyson I think famously said. So, if it's God's will, it's God's will. So and the fact that God put us on this earth and we invented defibrillators, I guess that's part of his plan. And the fact that we've come up with cryonics, that's part of his plan too. So if it works, maybe that's part of his plan that we come back to be back on the earth to worship him some more. So, I never look at that as any kind of conflict at all, which is why most people that are religious, that are cryopreserved, don't have an issue with it. In fact, there's a lot of people I know that are cryopreserved that are religious. And so I think it's unfortunate that people would use that, like, misunderstand what
That's the
cryonics is.
one reason. That's the
Yeah,
one reason. Yeah, the picking and choosing of God's will is another podcast in itself. And
you got to get
you know,
God in for that one.
yeah, I was going to say check out John Fugelsang's book. But yeah, I get that. All right, so I have asked you this question before, but I'll ask it again so now thousands of people can hear it. We live in sometimes an unhappy world where people decide to use weapons of mass destruction to hurt each other with. What happens if, God forbid, because you're not allowed to leave me for quite a few years now, you're in an explosion of some kind? Like, what happens? I mean, if all of a sudden I know you and Mycelia travel to Europe all the time, and Europe unfortunately has some nasty people that like to express themselves through bombs. I
I'm
mean,
glad that
do
yeah,
you send a
Europe's a bad
sack?
place. The United States, you're safe.
Well, touche. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I know. I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand your question about it.
Yeah, it's like,
Like
do you send Alcor a bag? I mean, what do you do?
no. Well, here's the thing. Okay, cryonics is just it's a hopeful option. I mean, we wanted to we wanted to have the best possible scenario for an outcome. That's why we want to, like I was saying in the beginning, it's better to have a cancer diagnosis
That's
where you
right.
can prepare for it than if you're found 3 weeks later of a heart attack alone in your apartment and you're rotting away. So yeah, look, there's always a chance that you could be in a plane crash and then you're gone. I mean, that's it. There's not much you can
Right.
do. If you're an explosion and your brain is really like just mutilated and there's no real
Then that's it.
cohesive way to bring it in a place where you can cryopreserve it very well. I mean that's it. I mean there's always a chance that there's accidents that can happen, but you want to try to mitigate as much as you can, and cryonics is one way to try to say, like be healthy, don't get in risky situations. It's unavoidable. How do you live your life without walking down the street and be hit by a car?
That's
Where
true.
you might get your head run over and then so yeah, look, it's unfortunate, but stuff can happen where it's irretrievable. My opinion though, and they do allow you to, they offer this when you sign up for this stuff, is that at what point should you be cryopreserved? In other words, if half of your brain is it's mutilated, but the other half is there, they ask you this when you're signing up. Do you want that? Now, in my opinion, I say yes. Say whatever you can, because here's the thing: we we don't know what's going to happen in the future. What we do know about the future, if you're following science, is that it keeps getting better and smarter. The
Right.
computational powers are growing exponentially, as Ray Kurzweil says. So that stuff is happening, which means that all of technology is going to get so advanced that they might be able to just use whatever portion is left to really bring you back in a really substantial way that it is you. So like I would take whatever shot I can, because to me life is the most, precious commodity that there is, because if you're not here, well then what good is anything if you're not here to perceive it?
So now I know people I'm sure are like interested now because what you've described in cryonics is like the third plan or the plan B, and the way that you call them, that they're called patients, is fascinating. But here's an idea, and this is a personal opinion question. You call it your plan B, but what about euthanasia? What about people that decide to take their own life? Do you ever just want to like reach out and shake them and say, but no, what if we could do this? Or are you a supporter of people that wish to, have a their own death at their own way?
Well, I'm a supporter of people having choice. I mean, everybody should be allowed to choose for themselves whatever it is they want to do. I'm 100% in favor of people choosing. I do feel bad for anybody that wants to kill themselves. I think it's a terrible situation of depression, and then they need to be, counseled or treated or whatever the case may be, so that they're not in that place, because the future is coming in a way, so we're so close to such a different future that humanity's never thought of before. I mean, if you don't grasp it, I recommend go read Ray's book, Singularity is Near, and you'll see where the world is going, because his predictions are coming true. That's why he's being, asked to speak everywhere now.
Right. Yeah.
He really is a brilliant guy, but if you understand what he's talking about, you'll see that the future of all of this amazing stuff that's coming medically, especially, I hate for people to miss out on that, because there are going to be all sorts of things that are going to make us much healthier, where, we won't have poor bodies. We won't have, I mean, even depression can be treated in ways that are a lot more successful than maybe the antidepressants that one of the symptoms is you might kill yourself. Like, like when you hear those
Yeah.
commercials where oh, well, the side effects could be.
If you take this and then decide you want to kill
Yeah.
yourself, stop taking the drug. Yeah. No,
But
I
look
hear you.
here with regard to euthanasia. No, look, honestly, that if you really wanted to just, to say, like, if we're talking about cryonics, euthanasia is probably one of the more successful ways to have a successful cryonics. Because if you know you're going to be euthanized, you can also say, well, look, this life's being really bad to me. I'm in constant pain all the
I'd like
time.
take two.
Why not
Let's
just, okay, I want euthanasia but I want to be cryopreserved, because when they bring me back, They might be able to bring me back to a much better body, and they might even be able to do different things so I don't feel depressed all the time. Because there is going to be this, and I hate to say utopia, but it is kind of on that verge of where we're going. Because, when you say utopia, you automatically think George Orwell and uh-oh, there's an underlying
Sure.
bad guy thing going
You
on
got
here.
it.
Because
That's right.
we grew up with movies and movies require drama.
Yeah.
But, there is going to be some really good stuff coming very soon in this world. I hate to see people miss out on it. I would never recommend euthanasia, but I understand if people have to choose that because they're in some sort of strange, situation or unfortunate one. But I would recommend highly, highly, if they are going to choose that, go with cryonics as the next step. Complete the whole, like, okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore, but I want to have cryopreservation because, by the way, most people love their pets more than they love their family. Well,
Don't
cryonics
they?
is offering that to pets too. You can get your pet frozen and or cryopreserved, and people, because you don't need a coroner to determine your pet's death, pets have the most successful cryonic preservation of all because you can euthanize them and immediately put them in a perfect cryopreservation. So look, I would never choose euthanasia just because I believe in cryonics. I probably shouldn't say never because you should never say never, but I wouldn't want to do that ever. I would rather always just say wait. I'd rather just you know have cryonics ready to go and whatever the case may be. But yeah, so I think that's one of those situations where it's somebody's choice. But yes, I would like to shake them and tell them, please, please try for cryonics. Because look, and by the way, this isn't, people say, oh, maybe this is arrogant or it's selfish. No, no, let's put it this way. Let's
Okay.
not talk about ourselves. Let's talk about loved ones. If you had a grandpa, or let's go even further, if you had a child that was diagnosed with cancer and there was no cure, and you knew this poor child who's 6, 7, 8 years old is looking at you like, Mommy, I don't want to die. And you're like, I mean, I couldn't live through it. I don't have children, but my God, I know how that would feel, or at least I feel I know how that would feel. And imagine if you said, wait, we could cryopreserve them. Maybe we can bring them back and they'll have a life.
Right. A plan
Oh my
B.
God,
Yeah.
I'd sign that up. And I can't imagine any parent that wouldn't do that. So when a person says, I would rather just, die and I don't want to take cryonics because I'm brave. Okay, I think that's misguided. But if you put it to someone they love and you say, wait, okay, we've got this possibly successful thing that could work. It could be successful, cryonic preservation. What do you want to do with your child who is now going to die or is about to die from an incurable disease? Which one of those do you want? Do you want that worm eating thing in what I talked about, where they're going to put them in the ground and get them eaten? We're going to throw them in the fire and burn them up, or do you want that last treatment? What do you do? Oh my God, who wouldn't go with that one? I mean, at least I would. I would say yes, give
Well,
it to my grandfather, child, whatever.
and I do tell my guests who are listening to us now that this isn't we want you all to join, Cryonetics and join the bandwagon because I am not a card carrying member in any way. I still don't know, and hopefully I have several years to figure it out. But I do have put your science hat on. What's the difference between freezing eggs and sperm and cryonetics? Are they both the same? Are they in the same family? I
Um,
mean, don't we freeze things all the time? Isn't there
here,
like eggs all over the place?
that's
And
a very good
because those are
observation.
frozen,
And
are they not?
oh yeah, look, here's the thing. When I have to debate this thing, which you can imagine it comes up, um, one of the things that I
Because that
like to
doesn't
throw at
have the
people,
stigma. That
one
does
of the
not
things
have
I
the
like to
stigma.
throw at people, especially nowadays when the society is so polarized politically,
Right.
I say, well, um, people say, well, cryonics, I don't know about that. It hasn't, you haven't brought anybody back yet. So I don't know. I want to see some proof. I need to
Yes.
see the proof. I said, so they say, and they think they'll throw a gotcha question at me. Like,
Right.
so, you want to do cryonics? Well, did anybody ever get brought back? And they know the answer is going to be no, because it would be all over the headlines, right? But
Right.
I always say like, well, yes. And they're like, well, oh, now they don't like that because they think I'm lying. I said, no, no, no. First of all, I guarantee that if you're Republican you will agree with me because, most Republicans I know believe that you are basically a human at conception. The minute that egg fertilizes that, or the sperm fertilizes that egg, that's a human. And we have frozen thousands of embryos that were brought back to life very successfully. So good on you, Republicans, because you believe in cryonics and you've proven it works.
Now, I'll put out the disclaimer to all the Republicans that are listening to me. That is Charlie's opinion that all Republicans do that. Damn, Charlie, you're going to get me hate mail all over the place.
Well, I'm
But
not
but
saying that to
but what you
slander. Look, I
you
think
are
that makes them
saying,
really enlightened.
well,
So, well, because and I say that, with a certain amount of levity, but the reality is, yes, we have a lot of cryopreserved people walking on this earth because they were cryopreserved as embryos and then brought
right,
back at a later date for, a myriad of reasons, right? Because people don't want to have a child at such and such time, but they either freeze their eggs, their sperm, or frozen embryos that are already fertilized, which there are a lot of people that are around that because of that. So, and when you ask, is there any real difference? Well, the reason that it works so well for sperms and eggs and even fertilized eggs is because those are very small. A blastocyte, fertilized egg or something like that is only a small number of
it's
cells.
cells
It's very
exactly.
easy to freeze and unfreeze. A body is so complex with trillions of cells and organs that are all different dimensions. So trying to freeze it all uniformly is very difficult for now. Although
Right,
it's still being done and very successfully, it's still tricky. And so to bring them back is the tricky part because we have to be able to unfreeze everything in a very uniform, stable manner because you can't, if you start just thawing somebody out and the outer parts are thawing out and the inner parts are still frozen, well, then it's going to be messy. The parts outside are going to be coming
on
apart while
so
the other
many
parts are
levels,
so it
messy.
has
Yeah,
to be, which is why one of the, theories or the idea is that we're going to develop nanotechnology to the point where you can actually put nanobots inside and do whatever is necessary. But again, that's futuristic science. We don't know yet, but we
right.
do know that science keeps progressing and we can see that at some point. Look, I always think to myself, my God, we can pinpoint land a rover on Mars,
Right.
which is hard to do. People take it for granted, but my God, we've done it. Imagine comparing that to just freeze somebody and unfreeze. To me, that unfreeze, freeze, unfreeze sounds a lot easier than landing a rover on a planet that I look up. I can't even see it in the sky. Imagine that we're landing millions of miles away on a multi-month mission, and we're worried that like we might not bring them back. Oh, I think cryonics is going to find a day where it's going to like, oh, that was easy. We could unfreeze him. We got him back. Here he is. Grandpa's talking too much now. So
Yeah.
I think this is what's going to happen.
So I'm sure people are loving this because this is because you and I are bantering as well as putting out all the misnomers. But I would be at a lack if I didn't go there. And that is Alcor and some of these other places over the last years have gotten some bad press. And that bad press goes into the social media sphere where it gets twisted and changed and straight up lied about. And all of a sudden, it's people are playing football with Willie Mays's head, or Walt Disney has been frozen and unfrozen and frozen and unfrozen, and they blah, 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 blah. By the way, those are two very famous people who are both frozen. To my knowledge, I think Walt's still frozen. But what's some of the truth? What's some of the fiction? I mean, are we just all guilty of this pretty not very exciting thing being cryonics, just being blown out of proportion because we just don't get it?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to whatever's in the news and such like that, or by the way, Walt Disney's not really frozen. That's just
Oh,
one of those
see,
urban
there
myths
you
that
go.
started a long
See,
time ago. Um, uh,
was
look,
all over that he was frozen, and of course, we had the was it The Simpsons, or there was a cartoon where there was all the ex-presidents' heads that were talking to you in some
that's
type of
probably Futurama.
Futurama. There you go. I mean, so we have mocked this for quite some time, wouldn't you say?
What's that?
We've mocked it. I mean,
Oh yeah,
people,
yeah.
yeah,
Look, it gets. Here's my look. I'll tell you what. I mentioned earlier that up until the 19 mid 60s, there was the main disposition of bodies when they died was burial,
right.
and then in the 60s, the Pope decided that it was okay to be cryopreserved, that it wasn't some terrible sin to have your somebody cremation. So
Cremation, not
they said, okay,
cryopreserved, right.
cremation's okay. So the Pope said cremation's okay in
In
the
the
60s.
60s.
Yeah.
That wasn't
And
all that long ago. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, it really wasn't. It was actually looked. It was frowned upon prior to that. It was considered like, oh my God, blasphemy! You're doing something terrible. But, and this is the reality. Um, I think, like James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. Well,
Right.
it is always about money. We live in a capitalist world. There's no way around that. And unfortunately, capitalism is insidiously causing people to make decisions in ways that are not always the most ethical or whatever. There's a lot of corruption.
Right.
And then,
Sure.
by the way, that can happen with, I mean, it's not just capitalism, but in our capitalist world, what happened was that, as you were describing earlier, when you went to the funeral parlors there, or you were talking about when you go to there, they try to upsell you. Oh, well, if
Yeah.
you really love the person that you
Get
love,
him this
you should
$10,000
yeah,
coffin.
you should get the golden casket. It's worth 100,000, but my God, they'll
Right.
live in a wonderful gold thing down under the ground, and the worms will
Right.
really enjoy it. Or, even the urns or whatever, they try to upsell you. But the thing was that burials were becoming very expensive. And then cremations were, it was, as it turned out, people were finding out, like, wait a minute, it's pretty simple to just throw a person in there when their body's dead, to put them into a pyre, a funeral pyre,
Hmm.
to burn them, to cremate them.
I'm Viking, so we've done this. I'm Norwegian and Welsh. We've used those funeral fires for a long time.
Yes, yes. But in the United States, when I'm talking about what's popular, I'm referring to the United States. But
Right.
so all of a sudden, and you can look at this statistically, you'll see what happened was then all of a sudden, if and you've plotted out, you'll see burials started plummeting down, and
Cremations went
cremation
up.
started going up because
Right.
everybody's like, yeah, you know what? There's nothing wrong with yeah, let's go with that. Grandpa, I think he likes smoking, so we'll just put him. It just became the choice. But here's the sad and possibly cynical reality. If you go back to the 60s, interestingly and coincidentally, when the Pope decided that that was the case, where it was okay to cryopreserve, I keep saying a mistake.
Cremate. Yeah.
It was
Cremate.
okay to cremate. At the same time, as it was 1967 when the first successful cryopreservation was done by a guy named by the name of James Bedford. And by the way, he's still cryopreserved. Well, okay, so in the late 60s, that's when all this was going on. We went from where it was just burials as our choice to all of a sudden cremation and cryonics erupted. Well, okay, all right, okay. So now, back then, you go to somebody and you say, well, hey, listen, grandpa's about to die, and here's the choices. There's burials. Oh, yeah, yeah, I know about burials. And or there's cremation. Oh yeah, what's that new thing? Yeah, well we can put him in the thing and say, oh, that's a little bit burn it. Well, yeah, but he's dead, so and then but there is cryonics, and then oh, what's that? Oh well, when he's pronounced dead, we'll cool him down, and then we put him with this antifreeze. And they might not have had antifreeze back, the biodegrade antifreeze back then,
Yes,
but
I'm sure.
still.
Yeah.
But those were the three choices. And if it was described properly to people, and you said, well, and then they said, like, well, gee, I know what burial is. You put them in the ground and, worms, but whatever. Yeah, burial means he's never coming back because he's dead. He's buried, right? That's right. And cremation, now that one, okay, I understand now. It's new to me because this is 1960. You're gonna burn them, and yeah, we'll give you the ashes, and you can put it on a mantle, and you can always, have them in the round. Or there's this other thing called cryonics. And like, well, what's that one now? Well, we're going to cool them down, and we're going to be able to maybe treat them later. And we might even be able to fix them, bring them back, maybe give them a new body. You might be able to talk grandpa again, and he might be able to see the grandchildren. And Yeah, that's a wonderful situation. So those are your three choices. Which one would you like? Now, any nice, emotionally rational human being is probably going to say, like, I'll take that third one. I really like that idea. I mean, I love my grandpa. I don't want him to be gone forever. If that's
So
an
how
option,
come
I'll
it
take
hasn't
that
caught
one.
on, Charlie?
What's that?
So how come it
And
hasn't
there
caught on?
comes my answer.
I was going to say, because you're
Yeah,
talking
here comes the answer.
1967 here.
And here I'm tying it all together for you. I brought up capitalism because the reality was the reason people started picking cremation, they said, well, because after all that explanation I just gave you, and everybody's saying, I want cryonics, I like cryonics, I love grandpa, I want cryonics, cryonics, and I want that. Okay. And they said, all right. And then the person who was standing there and gave you those three options then says, okay, all right, well, so you don't want the burial, right? Like, no, well, that's because that's about $5,000. Yeah. Oh, I know, 5,000. Well, okay, but cremation is about $1,000. Oh, well, but yeah, no, I want that cryonics one.
And the
Okay,
third one.
and that one cryonics. Well, that's 50,000.
There you
Uh,
go.
oh, 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 oh. Grandpa had a pretty good life. I mean,
And
all of a sudden, our human brain and our the way we are, we start to rationalize because we don't want to inflict ourselves with guilt. So we start making up ideas of like, oh, Grandpa had a pretty good life, but we don't want to feel bad about ourselves even with using that because that even sounds a little bit like, wait a minute,
so
is this because of
funny.
money? So now society, who did not like the idea of spending 50,000 but didn't want to feel like guilty, you know, pigs that they were going to say like, yeah, but wait, I was counting on an inheritance to buy a new car or support my kid, whatever the case may be. So they had to start to, in the back of their mind subconsciously, not only say like, well, grandpa had a good life, but they start to say, this Alcor thing or this cryonics thing, it probably doesn't really work, or maybe it doesn't work, or wait a minute. If they really want to skew it, they start saying, it's probably a scam. Yeah, or maybe they're just trying to make money, or it's crazy, or all. If you could just malign the idea, then you don't feel guilty. And I truly believe that this is part of what the process became, which is why it became like unacceptable for so many years because they tarnished it to make everybody appease their guilt. Because I guarantee if cryonics had been the cheapest option and by far the best option, everybody would have went to that. Who wouldn't in their right mind say like, yeah, I want that last treatment. And how much is it? Oh, it's $900 or it's $999. So it's a dollar less than the cremation. Oh my God, I'll take that. Like, I truly believe that so much is driven by capitalism in our world that people will rationalize. And I don't mean this like that they're going to think it out loud in their mind, like, you know what, I got to do. Because there are some people that will do that. But for the most part, that's kind of what I think happened, which is why cryonics didn't catch on because to this day, it's still pretty expensive. And that's one of the drawbacks here, which we should probably talk about because cryonics, unfortunately, because it's not scaled, it's still
Right.
pretty expensive.
It's a niche. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but the way I pay for it, the way most people pay for it is you buy a life insurance policy and you make the cryonics company like there's two major ones right now in the United States. There's Alcor
Hmm.
in Arizona, and there's another one called Cryonics Institute up in Detroit. And there is a new one that's come out too
Interrupt you
called
right there to say that once in Detroit, and I have known a winter in Detroit, and I've known a summer in Arizona. So I'm not sure if you picked the right one, my
yeah,
friend. I'm
I
just
know it.
saying.
I got to keep on throwing it. Throw more ice cubes in. This is terrible. No,
Yeah.
actually, it's just the way it is. The one in Arizona is in Scottsdale. That's Alcor, Cryonics Institute. Now these two are they've been around the longest. They're both good institutions. It works at either one. Alcor is fancier looking, but they both do the job. And then there is one other company called Tomorrow Biostasis, which is now starting they
Pick
flourished
up.
a
Yeah.
bit in Europe. Um, they do essentially the same financial plan as Alcor. So you have to buy an insurance policy, but they charge, upwards of 200,000 for a full body cryopreservation, and we'll get into what the difference is. So it like if you get an insurance policy, which you can buy for 200,000 or whatever, then or 250, whatever the case, whatever the cost is, well, that kind of takes care of it. Like you have an insurance policy, and then when you die, it pays. They and they send out the transport team and they'll come and get your body and they'll cryopreserve you and there you go, you're fine. Um, Cryonics Institute, though, doesn't offer the transport. You have to buy that separately. And the reason they do that is because they can bring the cost all the way down to about 30,000, between 30, 35, like 32,000, 35,000 to cryopreserve you. The difference is that you have to, you have to help, have people help you get there. Like, so if you are dying of cancer, you would essentially go to a hospice nearby and then make sure that you can get right to their facility after you're pronounced dead, and they'll cryopreserve you for a much less expensive price. And you could get an insurance policy to cover that. So this is the drawback for cryonics, is that it's very expensive. But again, if you get insurance policies, then that'll cover the cost. Now, to your point, you mentioned earlier, well, I'm not a member yet because I feel like I got a few years. If you sign up when you're young, those insurance policy payments are so cheap. It's like $5, $10 a month and you're covered. So I would recommend anybody that has even an interest or an inkling about like what to do, go find out how much a life insurance policy is. And if it's dirt cheap, you should just sign up with Cryonics, pay your five. Don't buy that, that Starbucks coffee extra on one day and use that payment to keep yourself where you might have cryonics and live later. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, it's funny. So I'm sure somebody down the road is driving and saying, what does this have to do with action to impact? And I say that there is a definite action in choosing this type of method, and it's got an impact that um I think you believe that this should be the way we die, and that should is mine, nobody else's. But if you're telling me that we can take care of the spiritual aspect, I can throw in that say there's a lot of parkland with a lot of dead bodies under it in the United States, and we're not making any more land. One would argue we're going to be losing land here pretty quickly. So there isn't a lot of place to bury bodies much anymore, which is also a reason why I think cremation got to be so big.
Yep.
You would really like this. You would really like this to be more the norm than this crazy friend of mine, Charlie, wants to freeze himself. I mean, you would really, and those are my words, and Charlie isn't crazy, everybody. I'm just saying that.
I mean, that's debatable. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's debatable. Yeah, but I'm just saying that, it's because it's become so abstract in people's brains that you kind of feel, I think, bummed that people aren't even willing to give it a try. Is that a kind of a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad. I
You feel
think
bad.
every
Okay.
day on the news I hear somebody, oh, they died. And I think, wow, what a shame. We do have this option, and it's so maligned, or it's not popular in our zeitgeist that people just ignore that option. And I think what a sad, sad situation. Some really brilliant, wonderful people die, and they could have been crowd preserved where they might come back. And I want to make a point about this because, I've been signed up with Chronics for almost, well, it's almost probably a quarter of a century now. It had to be since the
Okay.
early 2000s, right? My mindset is is something that is different in for people. So when I hear somebody dies, like everybody, I feel bad, or like most people, like
Right. You're
someone knows someone
compassionate.
died,
Yeah.
you tend to feel bad, right? You think, oh wow, that's a shame they died. But what happens in my mind, because I'm so attuned to the idea of chronics, I always think the first thing that goes through my mind before I go into full-blown sadness is I think, oh, that's not good, but wait, were they cryopreserved?
Ah,
Now, 99.999% of the time they weren't.
doesn't happen. Right.
Unfortunately, it's not. But because I happen to be in this futuristic community, I attend so many of these conferences and I'm always involved in this stuff. I do know a few people that died, and then I found out, like, wait, they were cryopreserved. What a difference in my intake of the way I feel when I hear that, wait, they were cryopreserved. Well, then we didn't officially lose them forever. They could come back. It would be wonderful to see my friend again because they were
Ah,
cryopreserved. That there's a chance that, like, it's such a weight off of my heart and shoulders that it's hard to describe for people that are not part of the cryonics
Right. Or even
membership.
willing to give it a try or just to think about it. Right.
Yeah.
That
So
when, yeah.
when you were talking about the idea of going into a ceremony when you die and you're a funeral, I attended funerals. Oh my God, the tears, the sadness, it's miserable.
Right.
The person that you loved is in that casket. They're not coming back. You can look and you can try to talk, but it's like, and look, people are supposed to believe in God, but I see them crying. Well, wait, if you think he's in heaven, why are you crying? You can just look up and say, hey, I'll see you in a little while. But they don't. They're crying because this is the person that they may never see again, and or they're burned in a cremation. They're never going to see him again. But when you go to, if you truly believe in cryonics and you're someone that has a loved one that's cryopreserved, when you go there for that ceremony, it's a different mindset. You go there and you think, wow, you know,
I hope to
they,
see you soon.
yeah, I'll see.
Okay.
I hope I'll see you. I look forward to when we get back. In fact, there's a lot of people that'll record things. They'll say, hey, we want to let you know, little Tommy just had his third birthday and we're going to talk to you. And they come back once a year or whenever they come to say hi again, just like people visit a gravesite. The difference is they are anticipating them coming back. And it's such a beautiful, better feeling than that permanency of loss that you feel when you are buried or when you're cremated. So even just for that reason, I would recommend cryopreservation because it's such a different and it's not a false hope because it's a scientific dealing. It's something where it could work. And like okay, crazy Charlie Kam, but there are some really brilliant people that are signed up. I mentioned Ray Kurzweil, for example. He's a member. He's signed up with
Mhm.
Cryonics. His mentor and by the way, he's an MIT graduate. He's a genius, right? But his mentor, um, Marvin Minsky,
Marvin Minsky. Yeah.
he's cryopreserved. He guy was a genius. I met him when I held a conference in Chicago, which you were very important
Yeah.
part of. Marvin Minsky is cryopreserved. So there's some really brilliant people that are signed up. In fact, there's a lot of scientists that I am aware of that are signed up with cryonics. So this isn't just the crazy guys like me. This is
So
about a
it's
lot of
almost like
brilliant
a
people.
frozen think tank right now, in a
There's a
way. It's
what's
like,
that?
well, I believe it's in Norway. We have the seed bank. Could cryonics be like this frozen brain bank?
Oh yeah. I mean, you
Yeah.
look, there's a lot of people that choose what's called neuropreservation, where they only freeze your brain, basically.
Okay.
Because let's say, for example, you're 90 years old and
And
you've
that's the
got
Futurama. That's the
yeah.
Futurama
Well,
cartoon, right?
Futurama gonna have fun with it, but and it's again, it's you're not gonna have a glass kit where you have the you have
No,
the
but
head
it would
there
be kind
looking
of
at
fun
you
to
all day.
talk to Richard Nixon right now. I'm sure he
Yes,
would
I
really
remember that
be
episode.
like,
Um, they made a reference one time on um, 30 Rock when Alex Baldwin said to Tina Fey, says, um, "Well, yes, we have Nixon's head is frozen." Like it was
yeah.
for as a cryonicist, I was laughing my head off. Excuse the pun, but
Yeah.
the thing is that there are people that choose neuropreservation, okay? Because let's say, for example, you're 90 years old and you're really debilitated, and the reason you're dying is because you've got some muscular disorder or whatever, and you're wasting away to almost nothing, and you're like, and you say, well, you want to be cryopreserved? And they might say, no, I don't. Why would I want to come back? I'm in pain all the time.
Right.
Well, if you understand the way technology is happening right now, we are already able to regrow a lot of organs. They've successfully regrown,
Yes. Yeah.
kidneys and bladders and all sorts of organs, right? They've done this. In fact, one of our mutual friends, Martine Rothblatt, has an organization that can regrow body organs, and they've used it successfully. Somebody
Right.
died in 2022 of or well, they were gonna die, and they needed a heart transplant, and they were able to grow a heart for this person, and they put it in, and it worked. The person lived. They died eventually of other complications, but the heart itself worked. And now you can do this with a lot of other organs. So eventually we will be able to grow brand new bodies. So the idea would be that, yeah, unfortunately you're 90 years old, but you really got a terrible body right now, but we're going to cryopreserve. So what Alcor has done and Tomorrow Biostasis is they say, well, look, instead of paying 200 and something $1,000, you can just do neuropreservation for 80,000 because, well, you're taking up a lot less space. It's just your head essentially. Again, people say, "Oh, it sounds gross," but I will point back to the idea of like I think getting buried in the ground, getting eaten by worms is more gross. I think getting thrown in a fire and getting buried is pretty gross. This is just cryopreserving your brain because that is where all your information and everything, which is what you are
That's your
all about, is what
supercomputer.
you are.
That's your
Because look,
supercomputer.
you
Yeah.
can replace your heart, your arms, and your legs. You can replace all that, but your brain is something that makes you you. And if by cryopreserving that part of you, there is going to be a time where you'll have brand new bodies. It might even be robotic bodies, but it'll be something where you'll be back to really good health. And that's what I believe. So that answers some other questions there about,
Yeah, and
neuropreservation.
I'm sure I've got some listeners that are loving this and freaking out all at the same time, and I
Yeah,
love
why
it.
not?
And I want to thank you so much for being on the show. But I've got one more question, and I'll let you go back to your world. So I know people's heads are spinning, and I love it. I think it's great. And the whole idea of this podcast is that we want to have these conversations and let people know different ideas and different views. But what is your dream? So just Charlie. So let's say you leave us, Charlie, and in 100 years from now, like why is your reason? Are you ready to come back to this world? Like, you're really hoping this works?
Yes.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so first I'll just correct that a little bit. I don't think it's going to be 100 years. I really think, like I was saying
Okay.
before, landing on Mars is it's so complicated. And there are scientists now that work on the idea of bringing this cryonics back, people bringing tissue back. They've done it successfully with different organ parts. So we're on the verge of where we can get. And if you look at the advances of AI technology, artificial intelligence, and it keeps getting smarter, it's solving problems that we can't even solve. I truly believe, and again, I'm going to reference Ray Kurzweil because in his book, he talks about the singularity coming in 2045.
Mm-hmm.
We're already at 2026. That means we're only 19 years away. And that is where computational powers will be doubling almost instantaneously. It'll be so brilliant that a lot of problems will be solved, including cryonics. So I truly believe that people will be able to be uncryopreserved within the next 20 years. I don't think it's going to be out 100 years. So for me, it really just it's a very fundamental answer is just I don't want to die. I really see the idea of going to heaven or whatever it is that you believe as far as an afterlife. Okay, that's part of what's called faith, right? But faith by
Right.
its definition is acceptance without proof, right? That's what it is. I
Right.
tend to want to always have proof of whatever. So if I'm going to throw my faith into anything or whatever, I would rather go with something that says to me like, well, look, we did cryopreserve embryos and we brought them back. So I see the science working there. So that makes more sense to me to choose the route of science and say, like, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll take a shot. I'll go with the cryonics because I do think that if humanity navigates things correctly and doesn't just destroy ourselves, because there's always that chance with nuclear or whatever. But if we do get to that point in the future where we can work in a nice way, then we could have a much better future where people can get along. I mean, part of what Ray Kurzweil talks about is something called the economy of abundance, where molecular manufacturing devices will mass produce a lot of things, so we won't live in such a way that we're all competing, we're all greedy. Maybe we will reach a level where humanity will have better sympathy and empathy and love towards one another. I would like to be a part of that world, so I'll take a chance. So for me, I'd like to just have that cryonics option. At the same time, cryonics is one of those things you sign up for, but you hope you never really have to use it because we'd like to get to what Ray Kurzweil talks about, the longevity escape velocity, which is coming, according to him, in 2032. Other ones say it's somewhere sooner, somewhere some little later. But that's at a point where you will have so many treatments that will actually get to age reversal. In fact, David Sinclair, who's this brilliant scientist out of Harvard, got an FDA approval just recently where he's actually doing treatments to do age reversal on humans. This is actually happening now as we speak, or as I speak. So the point is that this is the kind of thing where if we are getting to age reversal, we might get to that and you never need the cryonics. But You should always have it as a backup, even if you're young, because you never know when you might get hit by a bus or or you fall down the stairs and you die. You should always have it. Just sign it up, keep it as an insurance policy because why not? I mean, don't miss out on could be the great life that's coming, where we're all going to be young and healthy and enjoying good relationships. So that's for me. That's what I want, and I hope everybody else partakes in it.
Charlie Kam, my brother, thank you so much for doing this. I hope everybody out there is listening to our voices and is just dizzy. Is absolutely dizzy because it I want him to think. I want him to think. The whole idea of this, like I said, am I going to go buy my third insurance policy? I don't know. I don't know. But I'll tell you this, the whole idea that you were willing to take on all of these questions is something I really appreciate, my friend. And I thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, and I love you, and I think you're wonderful, and I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about
Aw,
this. So thank you again.
you're welcome.